Okay, I'm going to go ahead and begin the recording. The date is February 1st, 2019. The time is, it's 10 o'clock on Friday morning. This is the regularly scheduled meeting of ITSC 2309. And let's see, it looks like I'm broadcasting okay, and I am recording. If you don't have a, let's see, for example, I see someone that does not have a microphone, Nick. If you need to get in touch with me, use your chat icon and I will keep an eye on that. Now, see it up here. There's a, not sure where it is. Somewhere up here is a chat. There, chat. And it'll show me that somebody is trying to talk to me. Therefore, you do have text. Okay. I see. So, okay. What do we got? We need to get our stuff installed. So I'm going to go right through the install process right away and quickly. Basically, I believe we have the correct files on the server now. The enu.exe is simply a download package. This guy that's only 3/4 meg or so, a 3/4, whatever. Anyway, this one can be deleted. This one just pulls down the folder. So the folder is really the big one. If you execute it, you'll pull down that folder again. So inside of this folder, SQL, EXPR, SQL Express, and whatever ADV means, right? Open that, and inside of here, I have the folder called setup.exe. Going to execute that file, setup.exe, and essentially I'm just going to take, all the defaults except one. Now, if you, so I'm going to say new standalone installation. In general, do not reinstall SQL Server. Now, I believe I already have SQL Server installed here. It's just too much trouble to take it off. It is kind of a pain in the neck because you have to uninstall a whole bunch of files. There's no uninstall that just gets them all. You just have to go through all of the SQL Server, uninstall them. What you would do is if you reinstall, you will end up with 2 versions installed. This isn't my computer, and they're going to wipe it at the end of the semester, so I really don't care. Checks everything. The Windows firewall is a warning. You can not worry about that. And, you can check for updates. So I'm going to do a new installation of 2017. I'm going to end up with 2 of them if I do this. I'm going to accept the license terms, but this is just pretty much plain vanilla stuff. Just a minute, please. What is the question?
Never mind. I see it got touched.
Okay, we're just going to kind of take the defaults as we go through. So basically, and if you at home, if you want to put it in a different directory, go right ahead, put it in a different directory. It doesn't matter. Only thing is, it will not run on a remote USB drive. It needs to have a faster access than that. I'm going to say next. Okay. Let's see, I'm going to change it to, let's see, default instance, be fine. No, named instance, and we will name it SQL Express. I probably already have one, so I might have to name mine SQL Express 2. You can name yours SQL Express 1 if I already have one. Well, yes.
Well, my computer says SQL Express with SQL and the first letter of Express with caps. Is that okay?
It's okay. It's okay. I'm just trying to get, I probably won't go ahead through the full installation here. This one, grant perform volume maintenance checks. That's up to you. we're not going to really have it long enough to need that. If you were installing in a industrial application, you would probably check that. It's okay to check it. I'm going to say next, and I think this is okay. This is the one I want to get to. Stop right here. All of those others have been just default. We're just taking the default, take the default, take the default. It doesn't really matter. Now this one does matter. When we get here, and this is the one that says database configuration, specify database authentication security mode. The secure way to run your database. Are you guys okay back there? You're shaking your head. Why are you shaking your head? Tell me what's wrong.
We are late.
What?
Arrived late.
They just
Arrived late.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we're gonna go here. Matt, we're gonna go to our desktop.
Yeah.
On the desktop should be, where is it? Yes, here. Okay, this is the one that you get for the download. File on there. Go ahead and execute this guy. And we're going to take,
Basic or
we'll do basic. I don't know why this is a little bit different.
mine's the same.
Okay, we're just going to take the defaults on everything. So everything until we get to this page. Everything is default until we get to this page. Same thing at home. Okay, now this one, Windows authentication mode is the secure authentication mode. Everybody else doing okay? Okay. Secure authentication mode means I have to be logged into Windows at this computer to log in as the to log into the server. It means that if I lock this computer up, I lock the doors, this computer is secure because nobody can access it remotely. It's kind of a pain in the neck, but it keeps people from coming in and working on and doing something on the server from remote. You have to be here. If I change it to mixed mode, SQL and Windows authentication, I'm allowing somebody to, if I sit down at this machine and I log in as Windows user, I am the supervisor. I am the system administrator. So when I select the Windows authentication, I come in as the supervisor because I'm the person who installed it. So if I select and SQL Server means that I will have a password. So I'm going to select mixed mode. Select mixed mode. Select mixed mode. This is the first place we have not taken the defaults that it matters. I have to enter a password for the system administrator. Let us agree on the password we're going to use. Because if we don't, then you'll sit down at another computer and it's going to be completely different. So let's agree on the password. Now at home, you guys listening from at home, do as you please. Just do as you please, because nobody else, you're gonna sit down at that computer all the time.
So we still use the, so we still have to do mixed mode on the computer, on the computers that we install the software on.
Your computer at home is your computer. You do as you please. On the classroom computers, I'm going to ask that we use this administrator. I'm going to ask that it be capital B L U capital S K 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 SK don't need the S. SK1E. BLU3 SK1E. Blue sky, sort of. Okay? And now, if you lose that or forget it, you can get in, okay? Because you know you are the Windows administrator. Since you're the Windows administrator, by the fact that you have Windows authentication, you can get in. Now, if the doors were locked, you couldn't get in with Windows authentication. So we will enter that password, BLU3 SK1E, capital SK1E. People at home don't care. BLU3, capital SK1E. If you're at home, you don't care. Next. It's going to ask me to accept a couple of things. It's going to install some other stuff, accept one, and then I think I have to accept something else. Python. And once I accept that, I'm just about ready to do the installation. Now, next. I'm going to cancel. I'm going to cancel. Thought I was going to cancel. Because I don't want to install twice. Mine's already installed. Okay, so run through that. It's going to take it a while. We're going to go ahead, and before we leave here today, we're going to make sure all of them are installed. And so don't worry if you don't feel like you're getting it installed. We're going to come back to it. We had the wrong files in here last class period, and so I'm a little bit behind. So I'm rushing through it a little bit quickly to get us on through it. But before we leave here today, all of these machines will be installed, and I will help you install your machine. And so we'll have plenty of time today. I'm not going to leave till 2 o'clock, so I don't have any rush out the door. After this gets installed, and it'll sit there and it'll install for about a half an hour or so. And I'm not going to sit there and watch it. And if I do, now when I let me go to I'm going to go to my Windows to check it. I'm going to go to my Windows Administrative Tools. Okay, this probably won't work for you, but I'm going to go to Windows Administrative Tools, and I'm going to go to my Services. Okay, I want to see if it's running. I'm going to scroll down, and I'm going to find SQL Server. SQL Server, SQL Express. Notice it is running. Okay, that means I have it installed. Okay, I really didn't want to install it a second time because I don't need 2 of them. It just wastes space. So this one is running. Its startup type here is automatic. That's what I want. When I turn the computer on, it loads, it starts up. At home, on your machine at home, I'm going to point to it here. The startup type is automatic. At home, I'm going to double click it, and I'm going to look at the startup type. My options are automatic, manual, or disabled, also automatic delay start. At home, you probably want yours set to manual. For the same reason you don't leave your car running in the driveway at night. You're going to put it on manual because then you start it, but you can't use it unless you go over here and start it. So you go over here and you'd say start, and then it would start. And then when you're done, it stops. And now it's not sitting there drinking all of your resources, all of your memory, all of your battery power, and that kind of stuff. You probably don't want it. You're not doing it all the time. Most of the time, a database server runs all of the time. Most of the time, it runs on a dedicated machine. we have a joke that we say about SQL servers. How much of your computer resources do they need? And the answer is all of them, all of your memory, all of your processor. So they're not very friendly. Okay. So I'm done here. I can close this down. If I were done with using it, I would go, and it were set to on manual, I would just go stop it at this point, turn it off. Then when I'm ready, go back in and start it. Okay, I need one more thing that I don't believe I have, and that is the SSMS, the SQL Server Management Studio. The SSMS is my graphical user interface. I do not believe I have installed that yet because I was kind of disgusted with the whole thing last Friday, and I did not get that installed. I had the correct files on my machine. I don't know what's the matter with you guys. I guess they didn't like you. But I'm going to go ahead and install the SSMS. Likewise, I'm going to just execute it. So that's the Management Studio. This is the graphical user part. Now you may remember from using Microsoft Access that you just drove the mouse around and you created tables by clicking the little mouse and clicking the little mouse and click. Yeah, well you can do the same thing here in SQL Server, but we're not going to do it because this isn't a class about driving around with the mouse using the graphical user interface. This is an SQL class. So we're going to do it in SQL, but we still need the Management Studio, and it says click install to begin. So I'm pretty much going to take all defaults here. I'm just going to say install. Go ahead.
We'll do that right now. If I'm not mistaken, we can only install one thing at a time.
You might. I would wait until it got done because you could bump heads with it. So I would go ahead and wait until your SQL Server is installed, check it, make sure it's running, and then do this. I'm just going to take the defaults essentially. But I want mine running so I can use it for a demo. I'm going to start it. It again takes so it'll be a good hour worth of installing. That's why I was a little put off. Go ahead, please, with your question.
Which way I go? I go customize, install, or connect? No, those two between these two.
Installation that I'm just say install this because what you're doing is you're installing.
And then I open it over here out and then start it.
Okay.
Again.
Okay.
So then we have to install the reporting.
You don't. The reporting and all of that we're not going to use in this class. That's the next class. So you're welcome to come and take my next class. My advanced does the reporting. And let's see. It's got to install Visual Studio and a bunch of stuff on mine. So I'm going to let it go ahead with that. And I'm going to go ahead and go to the, let me check and make sure I don't have anybody trying to chat. Let me see. Daniel, are you can you turn on your mic and tell me you can hear me?
Yep, I can hear you.
Okay, good. I can hear you. You can mute your mic again. Now, what was I doing? I was going to go to Word because I have this. I'm going to send you this file. Had I gotten here in time today, my train was a little bit late. Somebody on the train was pulling into the station downtown, or was close to downtown anyway, and it was a little slow getting the train to the right place, so they were trying to back it up. And somebody on the train decided they didn't want to wait, so they pulled the emergency release on the door, popped open the door and jumped out. And of course that shut the train down. Oh well. Let's see, I want to open another document. I think I'm on the desktop. Okay. Database tables. Now we've talked to, I'm going to make this file available to you so you don't have to copy it. I'm going to send it out in an announcement, and I'll do that as soon as we get to a break point here. All database tables conform to some basic rules. Now, a database table. In a database, we don't have files per se. Yes, we do. We do have files. Everything in a computer is a file, but we pretend that it's not a file. And so what we work with in database is called a table. Now, a table, think of a table like a Rolodex of index cards. And basically, it's I have a series of cards, and I have information on those cards. And I have some rules about those cards. Now, each one of those cards is a record. So I pull out one card, and I look at that card. It has some information on it, maybe about one of my students. What might it have on it? Well, it would have your student CWID, college-wide ID, on there. It would have your name. It would have maybe your date of birth, depending on how much information you allow me to see. I'm not allowed to see your date of birth. Let's see what it would have. I can have your grade information, so I can have your class. Let's see. I can have your email. And so it would have some stuff about you, maybe your home address. They might let me see that. They might let me see your phone number. If I ask you, you might give a phone number, so I can put it into the database. And so that's what I have. And in these cards have some rules attached to them. And the first rule that we have, I access the data by content only. And I say up there, a database is not a spreadsheet. A database is not a spreadsheet. Now, a spreadsheet we access by row and column. And we say, you know, row, actually I say column first and then row, and like A23. A little bit backwards from mathematics, but so I always feel like I'm calling bingo every time I talk about a spreadsheet. A spreadsheet has some other properties. A spreadsheet lives in memory. So a spreadsheet will all fit in memory. A database is way, way too big to fit in memory most of the time. A database doesn't even hit its stride until you have, several million rows in it. Even a cheap little database like Access will handle several million rows. Now, with our database, our SQL Express, they limit us to how many we can have. This is why we get the full version of SQL Server, but we can only have, I don't know, 50 or 60,000 rows. Pretty small, really, for a database. Database lives on the disk, and everything is talking about input and output in a database. A database is a hideously inefficient creature except for input and output, reading stuff, getting stuff off of that disk, back out to the disk very quickly. We will never talk about, I'll never talk about the third row. The third row is Tom. I'll never talk about the third row in a database. I should really point with this instead of pointing up there, because I tend to want to, I'm still learning to work across the internet like this. So Tom, that's the third row, but I'll never talk about the third row. I'm only going to talk about the content of row with OID 21. Or I can say, show me all of the people whose name is Betty. I have 2 of them. So the content, never the location, because the location might happen in any way. A database table is not sorted, or to say it's not sorted isn't true. It's sorted any way you want it to be sorted. It's ordered any way. There is no ordering to the columns. There is no ordering to the rows. It's just that if it's in a row, it all has to stay together. I can sort those index cards any way I like. I can move stuff around on them any way I want it moved around, but I just have to keep it all together. Anybody ever sorted one column of your spreadsheet and not gotten the others? They used to do that a lot more easily. That was the bane of a lot of teachers' existence. They would sort their grade book by name, but they wouldn't sort the grades, or vice versa. Oops, call tech. So, content only. Now we're going to say later on, we're going to access, I'm going to say, show me the top 10 rows of something. Okay, I know. We just violated this rule. Yeah, it happens. Okay, let me move on. A field has exactly one value, one and only one value. The record with OID 21, notice I didn't say the third record. It might have the name Tom Jones. For example, I have the first name and last name in the same field. And I can do that. Does it have two values now, first name and a last name? No, it has one value. What I deny, what this one denies, is that I will ever go in and try to take just the last name or just the first name. Guess what we're going to do? We're going to go in and get just the last name or just the first name. So we're going to violate this one. Yes, some of these get violated from time to time. Because what happens if somebody sets up a database and they put first name, last name in the database, but later you want to sort by last name? So you got to be able to do it. So you are able to do it, but we say it is a violation to do it. What happens if you have to do it? Well, you just do it. It's not like, what if you're too drunk to drive but have to drive? I mean, it's this, we can get around that. What?
Can you do it part of the field?
Yeah, you can do part of a field. Yes, we don't do part of a field. You do part of a field when you have to accomplish some task. But in general, that means that your database isn't set up correctly. If you have to do that, you need to go in there and pull them apart and put them in two different fields. Okay. So I won't talk about just the last name. As I mentioned, we violate them sometimes. Next one is not violated. Next one says no duplicate records. A well-designed table cannot have a record that is duplicated in all fields. Well, if that's true, is there one field? What I want to get is one field. It's what I like. I don't always get my way here. Sometimes I have to have two, but I want one field that is unique. It is guaranteed to be unique, and everybody has to have one. Can you think of something at your office, perhaps, that is unique? About every record has this. Yeah, Social Security number. Yeah, we're not allowed to use Social Security number. Why? Because it's one of those things that becomes valuable. So we use the college-wide ID. We have to give it to you. So the government says, no, 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 Social Security number is ours. That's part of your tax information. I'm not allowed to know. That's confidential information. If I just, you don't give me your Social Security number. Used to be we had it on everything. It was on our student ID card. It was on your library card. Was your social. Not anymore. No two records may be the same. Records must have at least one unique field. Okay, here is, I didn't spell guaranteed right. Guaranteed, why did I misspell that? I'll get it. Oh. Guaranteed to be unique, and every record has one. Guaranteed to be unique, guaranteed by design to be unique, not just accidentally. If I were to go through and take a poll of everybody in here, it's very likely that your name might be unique. Could be. I don't know. I'm not going to ask everybody, but it's possible that it would be, but that doesn't make it a good key. I need something that is guaranteed to be unique, and your college-wide ID, you are guaranteed not to have the same one as anybody else. So that's what I need. The other thing is you have to have one. In order to be in this class, you have to have a college-wide ID. So I'm guaranteed that you have one. I'm guaranteed that it is unique. That is what I want, and we call this the primary key. Primary key is a very important piece of it. Have you ever heard that word before, that term before? Access, you have them. All databases, you will hit the idea of the primary key. Well, it's going to be the same thing here. We're going to hit the primary key first thing. So I need to get one. Every record has to have one. It cannot be null. It cannot be empty. It must be unique. Of called the primary key, abbreviated PK. So, for example, here's a value null. The word null, I just put those brackets on it to show you that's a special word that means nothing. It's really weird because, you know, it's something that is nothing. It's defined as nothing. So I'm going to come back. Nothing gives us a lot of trouble in database. Nothing gives us trouble in database. It really does. Those nothings are a pain in our neck. Okay, questions on that briefly. I'm going to go check and see how my installation is going. Setup complete, close. Okay, well, I guess I'm doing fine. Close.
How do we tell if our installation is frozen?
It's going to be there for a long time, so unless you get some kind of a message that says it's frozen, I mean, you've only been installing about 10 or 15 minutes. Expect to be there about 25 minutes at least. It's going to be a while, and it just sits there. It just sits there, and you think, oh, it's got to be frozen. No. That's why I'm moving on. Okay, types of fields, the things you can have in a database, and this is consistent. In Access, they named them differently, so that's one of the things I dislike about Access. It's non-consistent. Other databases, everything I'm going to say is true about all databases. Where Access is a little weird in this case. The types of fields, the things that I can have. I can have character data. A character field is just that. It's just characters. Now, your social security number is probably not a number because it doesn't make any sense to add, subtract, multiply, and divide it. Therefore, it's a character field. It's just characters. It's just digits. Your phone number, it makes no sense at all to divide your phone number by 2 and try to get some meaning out of that. You won't have any. So lots of things are characters. A field, if you name the field a char field, C-H-A-R, like this, char, is a field containing exactly 8 characters. Now, it doesn't have to be 8. It could be char 96, and that would be a field that contains exactly 96 characters. If you don't give it that many characters, if I don't give it 8 characters, it pads it out with spaces on the end, on the trailing spaces. That's fine. It doesn't hurt anything. So it uses some memory, yes. And I'm going to talk a little bit about it. Char 8. Char is fixed. If you give it too many characters, you will get an error on a char field. Okay, it won't chop it. Now, the other one, its sibling, its sister, brother, sister, whatever, is a varchar, V-A-R char. Varchar means a variable length character field. A variable length can take, if you give it only 6 characters, it only uses 6 characters. The other thing about a varchar, if you give it too many, it can take up to 8, but if you give it more than 8, it just chops it off. So it doesn't give you a runtime error. There's times when you want it to give, sometimes we say error messages are our friends, and sometimes they aren't. A variable length field may contain up to 8 characters. 8 is arbitrary, and for small fields, a fixed length is usually preferred. What is a small field? How many characters are a small field? Something like a person's name. How many characters are in a person's last name? What is the maximum number of characters you can have in a person's last name?
I don't know, but
Neither do I, but somebody make a guess. What?
I normally do this thing because I'm Hispanic.
Ah.
And our last name are you.
Anybody from Thailand? They have long names in Thailand. And they're unpronounceable to the English tongue. 64. Would you accept 64 characters? No, that's not enough. Okay, if your last name is over 64 characters, you're probably used to it getting cut off. I'm going to guess. So you could probably get away with 32. That's not very big. 64 still isn't very big. There's a cost to a varchar. So when you're working now, we're going to use varchar, and we'll use varchar 8 in here. Our examples will use things like varchar 8. I would never have a varchar 8. Our books examples will use those from time to time. The problem with it is I'm going to spend more trouble and time expanding and contracting those fields than I would just going ahead and taking the extra couple of half a dozen characters and just wasting them. It's going to cost me more in the runtime of having that field growing and shrinking. It'd be better just to say, if I've got a name and my names are usually under 16 characters, just call it char 16 and just let the spaces be there. Just let it use some. We say memory in database. I know it's not memory, it's disk space, but we tend to say memory when we mean disk space. Okay, talk a lot more about numeric. Some databases use the word number instead of numeric, N-U-M-B-E-R. If you go to Oracle, that's one place where they're inconsistent. If you would say number, N-U-M-B-E-R, instead of numeric. SQL Server uses the term numeric. That is a number, okay? And we're going to find out that there are different kinds of numbers. There are numbers. What kind? Well, there's two kinds of numbers. What are they? What? Well, text. If it's text, it's not a text is just digits. That's not a number. Okay, digits and decimals. So a number can be what? An integer. And what else? Who said? Floating point. A floating point, or it could be an integer. Anytime I know exactly where that decimal point goes, it's an integer. Okay. If I tell you that I'm going to pay you $10.22 an hour or something, whatever that you make now, I'm not going to pay you $10.22 an hour because that has a decimal in it. I'm going to pay you 1,022 cents an hour. I'm going to shift that decimal point out, multiply by 1,000, and then when I show it to you, when I write it on your check, I'll divide it and put that decimal point back in there. When I store it in my database, if I know where the decimal point is, it's an integer. It's a floating point when I get one that I don't have a clue where it goes. Double check my. Okay. Don't have any chats. A lot more on that later. A lot more. Right now, I'm just trying to get us started. And finally, dates. Databases always have a data type. A date has a default format. I'm going to talk about the default format. We're just going to put things in default format at first. And the default format is year, month, day. We can put it in any way we want. We will never have another Y2K problem. What was the Y2K problem?
Is it because they had month, the day, and the year?
And the year was two digits. So it was stored as text, and that came from COBOL. And I always have to watch it as that goes farther and farther into the past. I have a lot of students who were born since then. Y2K, what are you talking about? A lot of things are that way.
I heard in the year from 1999 to 2000.
Yeah.
I remember it now.
Oh yeah. Well, if you had lived through it, everybody was running out and buying ammunition and all that stuff. A date is a little bit different in now. A date is an integer, believe it or not, and it's a number of clock ticks that have elapsed since time zero. When was time zero
I
was,
think it was, it occurred in 1970.
yes, Happy New Year of 1970. Ball drops, it's now 1970, that's time zero. If it's a positive number, it's a number of clock ticks since then. If it's before that, if it's negative, it's on the other side of that. That's just the arbitrary number of time zero. You don't have to remember that. How big is a clock tick is another one. So how often does your clock tick? Your clock might tick once a day. In that case, I can only tell you that it is February 1st. I can't tell you what time it is. Clock ticks are typically 1 second, or sometimes they can run in milliseconds, then that number is just bigger. Just a quick swipe at it. We're going to have a whole module on this. So I'm just trying to get us started here. And we were going to create a database. Our first example will be a database, and well, scratch DB. We're going to keep track of owners and pets. Okay. I'm going to build a table where the owner has a unique ID, 4 characters, a name, a shoe size because I want to get a number in there, and a date of birth. So I'm going to use a char of, I'm going to use all 4 of those. And here is our first create table statement. Let me, okay, this is duplicated in the modules also. So here's the create table. Now, notice my formatting convention. SQL itself, SQL is not case sensitive. SQL is not case sensitive, but you have a case sensitive teacher. SQL, people will write it in all lowercase, people will write it in all uppercase. I'm going to tell you the convention that most people use for SQL, and that is that when it is a reserved word, it is usually written, these are written in all uppercase. And as we type these into our text editor over in SQL Server, it's going to turn blue, so it's going to highlight those for us. Okay, and when we see those, we will make them be all uppercase. If you don't, it's still going to work, but your teacher is going to get mad, and your teacher gets even. Yeah. Anyway, look, don't get too upset about the format right away. I expect your format to develop. I expect you to look at what I'm doing and sort of kind of try to match that, put some effort into it, and if you have another one that you like better, go ahead and humor me in here for right now and kind of try to go with mine. Note there is no particular a blank line means nothing. A line feed means nothing. A space, 1 or more spaces is the same. We have 1 space or 50 spaces. It all amounts to the same thing. In SQL proper, line feeds mean nothing. Go ahead.
So you're saying this character needs to be uppercase, not ID, OID, correct?
Well, the reason that this is uppercase right here is because create and table are words that are part of the SQL programming language. Owners is a word that I made up. It's the name of the table. And they're going to, these are going to, when right now I'm in, I think I have some down here that I formatted. Okay, here it is. This would be what it will look like when you are typing it in. So when you type create, it's going to turn blue and bold. So that means it put it in uppercase. Owners isn't. It's not always true. I personally like seeing stuff lined up. Don't get too worried about that kind of thing, because as your font changes, that's going to change. So don't get too wrapped up in format. I mean, it's not just the end of the world. You don't have to just fuss over every little detail. In general, think about your format. Notice how I have indented inside of the parentheses.
And you want parentheses beyond new line,
In general, I align the open parentheses and the closed parentheses. I would do the same thing if I were writing C or Java code with my curly brackets. Okay. It just makes it makes it easier to read is all. Okay. Yeah, you're the one that's going to probably have to go back and read it. So I can read SQL very well, but it's still better if it's. I'll get mad if you don't pay any attention at all to format. In other words, this has I have a tab in it right there. If you don't tab it over inside of those, I'm going to give you a message that I'm going to say this is a flat format. A flat format is just all crammed against the left margin. I want to see it spaced out. As you work with it, okay, you know, I'm not here just to hammer you with something right from day one. Pay attention to it. Think about it. As you develop your format, it will come more naturally to you. Okay. Let me go back up here. The owners, OID is char4, O name. I made that be varchar 16. If it were only 16 characters, I wouldn't really make it varchar. I'd make it char. But hey, I'm just doing that to have two different ones. Shoe size is numeric. A date. Okay. Here are the in SQL. Some platforms will let you have a blank line inside of a statement. Do you see this? This is a SQL statement right here. You see the statement? Starts with it all goes together. Now down here, this is another one, create table pets. That's a different statement. I'm not talking about that. This is a statement. Many databases will not allow you to have a blank line inside of the database, inside of a statement. Oracle, for example, will not. SQL Server doesn't have a problem. Therefore, it is a good idea not to have a completely blank line. A dash dash opens a comment. Dash dash says this line, the rest of this line is a comment. Well, there's nothing down there, so it doesn't matter. But there is something on that line. Okay? This is good programming practice. So the dash dash, instead of having a completely empty line, I put a dash dash on it, like this. Okay. Constraint. Now, how many people know of another way to do a primary key constraint? Has anybody ever seen it done this way? Have you ever seen this? And not this one. This one you've seen? Okay, what language, what platform were you programming? DB2, yes. This is a standard way many people will do primary keys. It used to be how we did it. Constraints. Now, the problem with doing it this way is your teacher doesn't like it. Databases will tend to vary in how they handle your error messages. So when you get an error message, it will tend to be a very cryptic one. When you violate that, and you try to put in a duplicate primary key. Therefore, it is best if you do use the named constraint. So this will work. Yes, it creates that as a primary key, but the name of that constraint is just something really weird because it just makes up something and gives you that name. Down here, when I do it this way and I say constraint and I give it a name, I'm saying this is a named constraint. Now, in the name of the constraint, I have the name of the table and the initial PK. So if something goes wrong with that primary key, i.e. it's null, it's a duplicate, whatever, I know exactly what table it came from, and I know which key it was by looking at that. So I will tend to make my names of the constraints long enough to where, because I'll almost never type them, It's also handy because I can go in and using my graphical user interface, I can look at all my constraints. And by looking at them and I see the name and I say, aha, I know what that is. Okay, it's really important. Notice also my naming convention here. Owners, the O table, what do all of my field names begin with O underscore? This is to keep the field names unique across the tables. So I might have other stuff named ID, but I only want one field named OID. Okay, this is my convention. As you get to the advanced class, we're going to have so many names floating around in here. We got variables up here and variables over here and variables down here. And unless you have some naming convention that keeps them straight, therein lies madness in database. So you're going to have lots of levels, lots of variables in different places. These are variables in the SQL program. So these are the highest level of variables. The constraint has it's in the owner table, therefore it has the word owner in it. I'll make these guys long as I need them. I'll write half a book in there in that field name. Not really, but it's not unusual for me to use 40 or 50 characters there, because I see that as part of the error message. Go ahead.
The way that I see that contract is that you take the primary key, the one that you are going to create, and put it in owner PK.
Here?
Yeah, that one. And when you are executing that piece of that block of program, is becoming owner PK.
Yes, yes. I'm adding information to it. If I just took primary key and put it up here, it's got some drawbacks to it. It doesn't have a name, and we're just about at the point of taking a break. But it doesn't have a name. I like it to have a name. I like it to have a name that I know what its name is. So when I violate it, I will see that name. Okay, I'm gonna go just for another second, and then I promise you we're gonna take a break. The next constraint is owner underscore null underscore o name. By the way, the constraint names have to be unique in the whole database. I can't have another constraint in a different table named owner PK. I can have another field, but not another constraint. This one says owner null o name. Check. O name is not null. I have a no comma here because at the very end, most database platforms will not allow you to put a comma there. If you do, I don't know why. I forget whether SQL Server allows it or not. I'm going to say no comma there because most of them do not. Similarly, pets. By the way, if I don't say not null, that means that you may not have a shoe size. It's just empty field. It can be empty. Date can be empty, not have a birth date. But you have to have a name. Before you be here, you have to have a name. Okay. And OID, you have to have an OID, and it has to be unique. Okay. We are going to take a short break. Let's see, by my clock up there, it is 7 minutes until 11. I'm going to restart at about 11:03, 11:04, something like that. Give us time to run to the bathroom. Questions from anybody on Zoom? You may unmute now if you, go ahead, Nick.
No questions. Just
okay. Nikki, is it? Say your name for me.
Nikki is fine.
Nikki, okay. I just when you unmute, I can see you. But
Okay.
you do. Okay. Well, I'm going to pause the recording. I'm resuming the recording now. The break is done. I was just discussing with the class, my physical class that is here next week. This really doesn't, you don't need to worry about this at all unless you're one of the people attending the physical class. My wife is having surgery next Friday. Therefore, next Friday, I'm going to conduct the class from a different location. Okay, I am going to conduct the class at the usual time in the usual manner, meaning it's going to be on Zoom. It will be recorded and it will be live at 10 o'clock. I will take questions online. So you'll need a microphone of some kind, or you can ask them via the chat tool if you don't have a microphone. You need a pretty decent microphone. Okay, I'm going to put that out as an announcement. I'm going to pause here for just a moment, and I'm going to go take a look at, I believe mine has installed, and I look at the SQL Server Tools. Okay, the very last one, SQL Server Tools. And so I have SQL Server and then SQL Server Tools. And under SQL Server, I have the SQL Server Management Studio. I suggest that if you want to make an icon to something, you make an icon to this guy, because this is going to be the one that we're using the most often. Okay, it's this one, and I'll come back to it. And we'll always be coming back to that. The Management Studio is essentially our graphical user interface. It is our programming interface. The Management Studio, basically you just take the defaults and install it. And then to start it, takes it a minute. Now, if your database is not running, so you're at home and your database is not running, this will still start. This doesn't care whether the database is running or not, because we're not connected yet. So an SQL Server database is in two pieces. I have the SQL Server, the machine that runs, that I don't really see. I only see it from the services. And then I have my graphical user interface that talks to it. I do not have to be on the same machine. I can run this on anything. What is this? Loading my, okay. I can be sitting in New Zealand running this thing, talking to the database server that is here at Collin College, if I had a real IP address and all that stuff. So here I am connected. Now, okay. Now, I forget whether I set this one up or not. This one, my authentication, notice I have two ways to do it. I have Windows authentication and SQL Server authentication. If I select Windows authentication, I come in as the supervisor. If I select Windows authentication, I come in as the management person, the administrator. And this has there's good reason to want to do this. I bypass the passwords. I don't need a password to get into SQL Server, because I'm the one that installed SQL Server. I own it. It's mine. If I got into Windows, it's going to let me into SQL Server. Okay. And the way I stop it is, the way I block this is, I don't give anybody the Windows password. So if I say connect, I am now the administrator. I connected using Windows authentication. Now, we're not going to usually connect using Windows authentication, right? Because I'm going to use SQL Server, meaning a username and a password. So it's time to create my users. So I'm sitting here as the Windows administrator. I have come in, this is my first time in, just installed, and I'm in as the Windows administrator. Okay, I'm going to go to Security tab. To the Security tab. I am making a recording of this, so you'll be able to get to it. Security. Drop it down. And I'm going to go to Logins. Okay. Now I have a bunch of them in there. I'm going to right-click the logins. I'm going to right-click the top one. I didn't need to drop that down. I can just right-click and say New Login. I'm the administrator. I'm creating a new login. Okay. Now, this guy that I'm creating now is me. This is me. I'm going to select SQL Server Authentication. Now, if you don't have the option to select SQL Server Authentication, that means that when you installed, you forgot to check SQL Server and that mixed mode authentication. You forgot to check that. It's okay, don't reinstall. We can fix it. I'm not going to go into just how right now. It's not a big deal. We can fix it. Just a little tweak we have to do to it. So SQL Server, now this guy is not going to be able to log in by Windows. This guy's going to have a password. So my login name is going, my login name is SW Smith. Your login name's not SW Smith. Okay. Make it what you want. No spaces. I don't know whether it's case sensitive or not. Find out. I got to give it a password. Don't care. What is a good password? It's got to be a password policy. What is the password policy? Probably, if you were guessing, what is the password policy? 3 pieces to it. How many? What? How many characters? 8, at least 8 characters. What about those characters? 1 uppercase, 1 number, 1 uppercase, 1 uppercase, 1 lowercase, 1 number, and 1 symbol, underscore, $, something weird. 3 out of 4 of those. And it can't be the same as anybody else's. No, yes, no, password can be. Confirm password, you have to do it twice. Now, if you forget your password, or if you sit down at a different machine, you're going to have to create your user on that different machine. Okay. I suggest you make your username and password the same across your home machine and the machine here, but that's your business. We're going to say enforce password policy. We are going to uncheck enforce password expiration because I don't want it to make me change the password first time I log in. I mean, I can. Okay. Now, for right now, the default database is master. We're going to have to come back and change that in a minute. We won't be able to log in with the default database set to master, but that's all we've got right now. Right now, I have finished setting it up. How did I do? I gave it my login name, some form of your name, I would suggest. I would suggest that it not be too many characters, something you can type easily, a password that you'll remember. Enforce password policy, do not enforce password expiration, and say okay. And look, my user just came into existence. Yay. Questions? Questions from internet land. You do this at home too. Okay. Next, I'm going to come back to that login in a minute, so don't forget where he's at. And databases. Under databases, I'm going to right click and I'm going to say new database. Okay, I'm going to specify this semester, I'm going to specify a database name. If you misname the database, I'm going to get mad because that means that if you name the database something different than this, your stuff isn't going to run when I get it. And I want to just be able to say, okay, execute your stuff and not have to go in and change the database name. So we're going to name the database Scratch, S-C-R-A-T-C-H, Scratch, underscore DB. I do not believe it to be case sensitive. Scratch DB. Now, the owner of the database is, guess who? You, the user that you just created. Rest of it we don't have to worry about. We'll talk about this stuff in more detail later towards the end of the class. We'll talk about there's lots of things I can do with this, and I'm going to say okay. I have now created the database. So there's my database, ScratchDB. I am the owner. Okay, one more little task, one more little bitty task here. Next one, under security, go back to SW Smith. You're not SW Smith, are you? I'm SW Smith. If I say SW Smith, I mean your user. I'm gonna click it. And under the default database, guess what we're gonna make it? ScratchDB. We're ready to rock and roll, finally. Questions? Okay, if you have any trouble at all, at noon, I'm not leaving at till 2, well, till close to 2. So when we will go to lab, and when we're in lab, you do not have to stay for lab. No, please don't raise your hand and ask if you can go to the bathroom or something. Lab it's your call. You can stay. I will be here. Sometimes I don't always stay if nobody else is here, but I'm going to stay today just in case somebody from online wants some help with something, getting their stuff running. So you can bring your laptop, and I will sit down beside you and help you get everything installed. I cannot install your laptop. You're the one that has to work the keys on it. You just have too much, like your cell phone or your contents of your billfold. I don't touch that kind of stuff. Okay, I'm done. Now, this is the administrator, by the way. So right here is the administrator. I can either right-click it and say disconnect, or I can use the icon up here with the X on it that says disconnect, either one. I'm going to disconnect. I am no longer connected to the database. The database does not care. This guy does not care whether he is running on the same machine or a different machine as the database. He just needs a password. All he needs to do is have a TCP/IP connection and a password and the ability to connect. Right? So who has the ability to connect? Well, connect to a database engine. SQL Express. By the way, we're not going to use Windows authentication. We're going to use SQL Server authentication. What is my login? Well, my login is SW. I have a password. Now I have to use a password. You're free to say remember password. I would normally not suggest you do that, but gee, we're just going to have all anybody's going to get is class stuff here. Sometimes we'll have other classes that will be using our server. I think next semester we will. Oh well, we just try to get along with everybody. Stay out of other people's stuff. Nothing interesting in there anyway. Heck, I can write a better program than most people. I say connect. Login failed. Okay, let's see why that happened. Now, I know what happened. This is what happens when I guess what I did was when I installed this and I thought I had done this, I did not go all the way through and check the box in there. Remember that when I said, make sure you check this box does say mixed mode authentication. Well, this is what happens if you don't.
I did click it and I'm still getting this. I do remember clicking mixed mode authentication.
Let's see. Let's see what the, let me see if I can get rid of it. Is it the same number, error 18456? Is this number error 18456? Everybody else getting the same one? Okay. Let's check something. Okay. I'm going to go back because now go back to Windows Authentication. I have to go back in as the administrator to fix anything. And when I say connect, now I connect again as the administrator. Let's see, I'm going to go security. Let's see, let me see how to do it. I right click the server at the top, right click the server, go to properties. Under this tab over here on the left, we're going to go to security. And here it is right here, the very first one, Windows Authentication Mode, SQL Server and Windows. Do you see them both?
Yes.
Do they look like this? So do you have this one selected?
I do now.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to get my knickers in a big knot over it, you know. That's how you fix it. Now it should work. I'm glad I did that. I meant to do that. I really did. I'm gonna say okay. Some of your changes will not take effect until SQL Server is restarted. SQL Server means the server service. Okay, it does not mean the server management studio. So in order to do that, let's see, I'm going to right click and I'm going to go down to restart. Restart will restart the server. Yes, I do. I would. So he's going to stop and restart. Most of the time, you know, what you do over here in the Server Management Studio, SSMS, doesn't have anything really to do with the server. They just talk to each other. Why is it taking so long to stop the service? I said yes. All right, that shouldn't be taking that long. I'm going to go back over to my Windows Admin Tools, Services, down to the S, SQL Express. I'm going to click Stop. Yes. And Start. And here's where you would change it from automatic to manual if you want yours to be manual. Around here, might as well leave it automatic. Just leave the car running. Now, I'm done with that. Connect database engine. Connect with SQL Server authentication. My login is SW Smith. By the way, if you were to have reinstalled the server, you would have under server name, you would have 2 servers there. If you have more than one server, and it's possible to have 2 or 3 or 4, you can have you could have a Windows, you could have a 2008 server on this machine. Hooray for the Salvation Army Band. Okay. Questions, problems with our world? Okay, cool. Anybody having issues with that, we'll be happy to troubleshoot it in about a half hour. And that includes anybody from home. Okay, this is our programming environment. Now, by the way, if they're in here, I can create tables in here. It's basically everything that Access was. So I can drive around in here and I can create my tables this way. But we're not going to do that. We're going to use SQL because this class is about SQL. This isn't about driving around in the GUI. But we're going to see that we can, sometimes, hey, I'll give up my GUI when they pry it from my cold dead fingers. But for right now, we're going to use this. And we're going to go to new query, a new query. Okay, bingo. The properties window, we can close the properties window. I don't need it at all. So this is my programming window. Now, so we're just going to go wild on it. Now, first thing I want to show you how to do is how to turn on your line numbers. Line numbers are, what? Let's see, where are they? Right click. Let's see, I'll remember this in a minute. I'm gonna have to think about how we did that. Let's see. Right click, properties window. How do we do, what is it? Tools, oh yeah, it's tools, okay. Tools, options, text editor, yes, and then drop that down. And all languages, I believe. Oh, general, okay, general will be fine. I think it does either way. I think it's all language. All languages, general, and then check line numbers. Everybody follow that? No. Okay. I'm going to cancel and do it again. Go to tools. See tools up there? Tools. Drop down tools. Pull down to options. Pull down to all languages. Under text editor. Under text editor, first text editor, then all languages, then general.
You want word wrap?
It's up to you on word wrap. I don't care. This stuff you put in here doesn't change anything about the programming, but it makes it a whole lot easier if when it says you have an error on line 10, you know where line 10 is. So I'm going to turn on line numbers. Word wrap's your business. Personally, I like to turn off automatic brace completion. That is a vexation to me. Some people like it, some don't. That's just how you turn on line numbers. If you don't want line numbers, leave them off. It's fine with me. Okay. I'm going to open a file, and I will give you this file. And the file is here. And files begin in SQL. The files end with SQL. I'm going to do control. This guy right here, you can close him down. I'm going to send you this creation script before we're done with class, and I'm going to wrap up here in about 15 minutes. I'm going to send out this creation script, and it will run. And so this is my demonstration program. Okay, the first line of every SQL batch. SQL batch program is a text program. The text program, essentially, it runs it one line at a time. We're going to see there are other kinds of programs you can have SQL. You can have compiled programs. Whether we get to those or not will depend on how fast we move in this class. That's really part of the next class. Okay. use ScratchDB. We will always select the database. If you want to see your teacher get soggy and hard to light, don't do that. You have to select the database. Now, if you don't select the database, to what database do we go? The default database, and the default database is ScratchDB. So if you don't select the database, you end up in ScratchDB because I had to give you a default database. ScratchDB is our place where we just create anything we want to create. Anything that's in there that you want to delete, you delete it. Anything that's in there that you want in there that you want to create something, you want to practice with something, test something, you just put it in there. That's fine. Or you go in there and you just wipe everything out. I'm not going to ever particularly grade anything that I need to see in there. I'm going to grade your program, not your tables. You'll never send me your tables. I only want to see your program. Use ScratchDB. Since mine's named ScratchDB and yours is named ScratchDB, when you send me your code, it'll run in mine just fine. Okay. The go command. Go command is misunderstood many times. People think it's a strange thing. Go command just clears any pending commands. By the way, I can change the name of it. Go is not a database command. It does not end in a semicolon. Database commands end in semicolons. That's one that if you put a semicolon, it's not wrong. Go, it just says clear everything off and start a new batch program. There's times when we should do that, and I'll point those out. You don't have to write go after every statement. Okay? Some people do. It's not necessary. So go command clears any pending commands. We'll talk about that more. So now I'm going to check whether or not the tables exist already. If they do, I'm going to drop them. Okay, this is not SQL code. This is not SQL code. This is TSQL. This is unique to SQL Server. This is an if-then-else logic. SQL proper, SQL code in and of itself does not have an if-then-else statement. Okay, but it's real handy to have them. And we're going to find out that, you know, I need them. But we're going to mainly do without them, except this one time. This one time, I'm going to go without it. If object ID, so make a note of this, we're going to use it. If object ID, and it's in single quotes, pets, is not null, drop table pets. In other words, if pets exists, drop it. Because it's, if I just say drop it and it does not exist, it gives me an error, and that causes my batch file to error out. If I try to create it and it does exist, it won't override it. It gives me an error also. So I have to say, if it exists, drop it. Questions? Now, I'm going to see in a minute that I have to drop it in that order. And the reason for that will come up in a minute. So it's got to be, I've got to drop the pets table first, and then the owners table. So I have an owners. My owner owns 0 or more pets. If owners is not null, notice that he is in single quotes. If you ever see me use a double quote in my code, raise your hand and say, Dr. Smith, you're writing Pascal or C or Java or something. That's not SQL. SQL uses single quotes. Access will use a double quote. Single quotes for strings. So this says if there's anything, if there's something of this name, if I have anything named pets, drop it. Now I'm going to create the table owners. Here it is. By the way, I'm allowed to run it in pieces. I can highlight a piece of it like this, and I can say execute. And it says commands completed successfully. In other words, if, well, they didn't exist, but if they did, they're gone now. I didn't have any, but okay. The other thing is that when I get this window down here, it's handy to be able to dismiss this window. The way you dismiss this window, and it took me 2 years to learn this, so you're getting this really quickly, is Control R. Dismisses that window.
For release.
What?
I think R stands for release.
Okay. Yeah, well, it took me a while to figure that out. Okay. Now, I'm creating the table. The next thing that happens is I create the table owners. If I were just to execute this code, I'd just do it all at once, but I'm going to do it in little pieces here. Create table owners. So I can, if I choose, highlight that. What will I do? I'll have an OID, an O name, a shoe size, and a date of birth. And 2 constraints, a primary key and a not null constraint. Questions on any of those? Well, we can test it. Everything is successful. Release. Okay. Now we get a little bit fun here. Pets. All right. Here's where students, I tend to start losing students. Most of the time I'm fine up until this. But here's where we start having some problems. How many pets can an owner have?
Several.
How many is several?
But some have it. Some people have 30.
30. Only
It's
30.
outrageous.
Okay. Well,
But
yeah, as long,
some have more.
sound like the people that live behind me. They have a bunch of dogs,
Like mice or gerbils.
gerbils, snakes. Yep. Okay. So there's essentially no limit to how many pets a person can have. I can't put an upper bound on it. I have to be a zoo. Personally, I can't see any sense in having an animal you can't eat, but not really. I didn't say that. Can an owner have 0 pets?
Yes.
Somebody might argue, well, is he really an owner if he doesn't have any pets? But yes. A parent can have 0 children. It's not that you're not a parent, it's you could be a parent. So you can have 0 or more. So that's what that means. Now, the way we have a 0 or more, this is our first example of a one-to-many relationship. One parent, one owner has many, where many means 0 or more. Now, the way we do that, a one-to-many relationship, and we're going to see this puppy coming up over and over and over and over again, so get used to it. Right now, just get used to it. This is the way we do it. The primary key of the one side, the primary key of the one side gets copied over into the many side. One owner, many pets. The primary key of the one side gets copied into the many side. Keep the name the same. No, you don't have to keep the name the same. You don't have to. I want you to keep the name the same because it will avoid a lot of confusion if you will just do that. Our examples in the textbook, when I got them from the publisher, they didn't do that, and I changed the examples and made them do that. Okay. Now, notice that this is the pets table. And what did I tell you to name the fields in the pets table? Well, it's the P table, begins with a P. What did I tell you to name them? P ID, P name. Okay, everything here. Here's one that doesn't fit.
But the owner starts the L.
Right, this one takes you to a different table. This one tells you what the owner of that pet is. So it is consistent, even though by violating that rule, I'm telling you something about it. You see something that doesn't fit, that's taking you to a different table. Okay, so I have an owner ID. So owner ID 1234 might own pet 5678. Therefore, in pet ID 5678, his name is Waldron or something. OID would have the owner's ID there. Have you seen that before? Or is this new? No, it's not new, or no, you haven't seen it before. A lot of people have. Okay. All right. When you set this up, it's called a foreign key. The constraint looks like this: constraint, pet owner, foreign key, OID. I do want the constraint done like that. There is a way to do the constraint, what we call the inline constraint, and we just put, references, foreign key references on that, and it does it automatically for you. I personally like named constraints. This is the official way to do a constraint. It looks like this. It is a line on a line by itself, and it has a name. So this is called a named constraint. Okay, all of our constraints will be a named constraint, unless I'm just getting really slow and sloppy with something. And then sometimes I'll just put primary key on something if I'm just creating a table just to test something. You can test it. If you want to test it in there, that's fine. But when you turn something in, make it have a named constraint on it. That's the end of the creation script. Okay. Here is some of the inserts. I'm now doing an insert. We only have a few minutes left. I'm going to go ahead and execute this whole thing, execute it all at once, and it executed it, and it inserted the rows into it. Next class period, I'm going to cover the inserts, and actually you can see those on the they're in the internet. You are free to do the module, what module? The module 3, and I think, isn't it 3 and 4? I don't remember. I don't have my Canvas up. I think it's module 3 and module 4. Module 3 is the create table. Module 4 is insert, update, delete. I'm going to go ahead and assign insert, update, and delete. I'm going to cover insert, update, and delete next class period in more detail. You should be able to figure those out. By the way, insert, create table, and updating tables and inserting data into the table is not where the book begins. I don't know why database books do that. Seems to me like they ought to begin with creating tables, but they never do. You look at those Shelley Cashman books that do Access. Those of you who had Access, did you take it here at Collin College? Yes or no? Yes? Did you take ITSW 1307 or sometimes 1407? 1307? Yeah, that textbook they use starts, it doesn't start with creating tables. You just start throwing data into stuff. It leads to no end of confusion. I always start with creating tables. Therefore, I've started about 250 pages into the book. That's okay, we're gonna go back. We're gonna back up. I just want to cover creating tables so you get some idea, how does a table come into existence? I don't think I'm gonna go, I'll bring that up. Not now. Let's go. Goodness, my username and password is in here. Guess I ought to take my username and password out of Firefox. We'll take a look at this one. I see I got students turning stuff in, which is a good idea. I have a couple of messages. I'm not going to open the messages in here, but I have a couple. Those are new today. I'll open them when after I turn off the recording. Create table. So module 3 is creating the table. Module 4 is inserting, updating data. It's pretty straightforward. I'll let you follow it. And then we go back here. So when it says non sequitur, that means it's not in sequence. So it comes from pages. The reading assignment is given there. So we're up at page 340 to 351 up in there. And so I didn't say read the whole chapter, I just said read that. And then we're going to back up to the first part of the book and work through it kind of in sequence. But I just wanted to cover this idea of creating tables first. This is how you create a table. Yes, you can also create them using the graphical user interface. But when I'm working on a database, I always create my tables with an SQL script. I always create the tables, and I always go through and drop all the tables, create all my tables, and I have one script that does that. And then if I make any changes to it, I just run that script again. I don't like making changes to a database, particularly if I don't have any data in it. I don't want to make any changes because I want to drop everything and start from a clean slate. Okay, so now if I have a million rows in there, I'm not going to have that luxury. I'm going to have to maintain it. But before I get any data in there, I'm never going to go in and alter a table, modify anything. I'm just going to drop everything and rerun it. Questions? About 3 or 4 minutes here. Okay, what I usually do at 10 minutes to 12, you're probably like me, you are probably ready for a break. This is just about as long as I can go. I don't know about you guys who are sitting still, as long as I can talk. So I'm going to shut up here in a minute, and I will always end by noon. You can count on it. So if you need to make an appointment or something, you can count on me being done by noon. If you need to make an appointment otherwise, you can count on the assignment being posted out there, almost, or the lecture being posted by the end of class. And that's my commitment. Get the thing up and running. I know I was in a bit of a dither at the beginning because things weren't running right. I don't know why I get so upset when things don't run right. They never run right on the first day. It's silly. So anyway, I forgot and left the file here. I had to come back in and get it, which that's a big deal for me because it's a 2.5-hour train ride. What else? Okay, I told you, and I'm going to tell you again. Next Friday, what are we going to do?
Home class as usual, just without you physically present.
The class time will be 10 o'clock. I will come online at 10 o'clock.
It'll be online.
They'll be online. Now, I don't know whether you'll be able to get into this classroom or not. And even if you could, I don't think you have speakers on your machine, do you?
You don't.
You don't. Okay, so that means you need a headset of some kind. But if you work from home, you'll be able to come in. If you do not connect right at 10 o'clock, that's okay. The lecture will be posted under its date. Under where are they posted? For example, let's see, let's go to modules. All the way to the bottom, scroll all the way to the bottom. And the last module is what? Recorded lectures, the very last module. Okay, scroll down to the very last module. What do you see in there? There is a recording about software setup. There is an introductory recording where I talk about the syllabus and stuff. I'm just welcome that. I did that a long time before class started. This was the one from last Friday. So there'll be another one in there today, titled Lecture 2/1/2019. That'll be this one. And then next week there'll be another one titled 2/8/2019. You can probably figure out what that is. So it'll be the lecture. If you don't log in at 10 o'clock, if you log in at 10 o'clock, you'll get to. I typically don't turn on my video either because you really don't care to see me one way or the other on there anyway. Just waste bandwidth, and it's not important. But you will see, for example, everybody out there sees this. So I'll try to remember to point with my mouse. Questions? Okay, I'm going to put those two files that I used, the Word file and the SQL file, out as I'll attach them to an announcement, send the announcement, and I will take care of that before I leave, and I'll be about 2 o'clock. So I am not going to be on campus next Friday. I'm going to make an announcement. I'll probably send out an announcement every day on that. Everybody gets sick of hearing it. I'm not going to be on campus next Friday. So you do not need to come to class next Friday. You do have a lecture. You are responsible for the lecture. You may or may not log in at 10 o'clock. Whether you do or not, you still have to view or hear the lecture. Okay? You are dismissed. If I have no anything from anybody? Okay, I'm about to end the meeting. And what I do typically for lab, I end the meeting and I get the file started processing. That file has to process for about 20 minutes before I can upload it. So I did get that started. And then what I'll do is, as soon as that gets started, I'll come back and I'll restart the meeting, and you can talk to me online. Okay, so right now I'm going to end the meeting and ending the meeting. Goodbye.